have a 2006 Ford F150 with a 5.4 in it. So this one we're going to go ahead and pull the cylinder heads off of, and I'm going to go ahead and go over the different steps. I've already got the exhaust manifolds off. We're going to pull the intake box and tube off, valve covers, timing cover, fan, and start working our way through it. While the coolant's draining, I'm going to go ahead and start taking a couple things off here before I get down to the radiator, fan, and shroud. I'm going to go ahead and take the computer loose. Computer, it'll actually come out off the firewall here to give you more room whenever it's time to actually get the cylinder head off. Couple simple clips right there. Where I got the battery unhooked too. Like that, the computer's off, and we have our vent tube coming from our valve cover on the passenger side. It's got to come off. Get it out. There's a little clip here. Holds that tube on. Get it spread out just enough to take it loose. On this left side we have mass airflow sensor and its connector. Take it loose. One bolt holding the tube on. And get a different socket for that. Just a different ratchet. Off there, wiggles out of the fender. Take the air box off now that I've got the 4 bolts out. Now we're down to the intake here. Get the intake out. There's a couple bolts here. So take the alternator out, a couple bolts off the crossover pipe and the thermostat housing, and then take several bolts out that goes down here on each side, all the way across the intake here on both sides. Unhook the fuel line. Take that loose there. Then we can pull the coil packs out, valve covers off, get the fan shroud out, we will have to take this plastic cover off, and we'll take the fan loose to get the shroud and the fan out. I know I have been able to get them out without taking the upper hose loose, but most of the time you don't take the upper hose loose, at least from the radiator side. Seeing as how we're taking everything apart, we're going to pull the upper radiator hose all the way off. The fan shroud, the alternator out, started unhooking some of the wiring. You're going to have to undo the power steering reservoir bracket and unhook the heater line from this passenger side, and then I can go ahead and I can finish pulling out a few more connections. So there's one more on the throttle body that I'll take out, and fuel line, unhook it, and then unbolt the intake. Now, a lot of these 3-valve engines, if this intake's never been out, there should be a 10mm nut on the back side of it holding the wiring harness. There's also going to be a couple wires on the back side. Ford designed a flap inside of their intakes that they call the intake manifold runner control. It's got a couple bars going to an actuator on the back side, so I have to be careful lifting it up and taking that out as well. on this stud here is the one that the nut holds the harness onto the back. They also have the knock sensors underneath of the intake, and the way they're run, the connectors from the factory, is they actually come over top of these bars, so which is the bars for the manifold runner control. So whenever you take the intake out, you unplug them, and you can actually wrap them underneath of the bars, and it doesn't hurt it at all. This vacuum line here is the main vacuum that goes over to the brake booster. Once you have everything loose on it and you can lift it up, you can usually reach down along the side here between the cylinder head and the intake. With it lifted up just a little bit, and you can wiggle that line off. There is a clamp on it, so it does have a tight fit. So then of course you have your plug here for the actuator for the intake manifold runner. I thought I would just explain that while I had the intake sitting here. Alright, with the intake out now, I'm going to go ahead and move on to pulling the valve covers off, the water pump pulley off, power steering, and the balancer, and then the timing cover. After all of that, then we'll be down to the timing chains in it. We'll make sure everything's set at top dead center. Then I can go ahead and work on taking the cylinder heads off. I've got the balancer off. I've got the bottom bolt off for the power steering, oil filter off, and that was purely just to make it easier to get to the power steering pump. Of course, with taking the heads off, the oil change is going to get done. So this bolt up here is pretty tight inside the timing cover where it bolts to. Then there's one more bolt on the power steering pump. It can come off. There is the crankshaft position sensor over here on the left-hand side of the timing cover. I have a bad habit of forgetting to unplug it whenever I go to take the timing cover off, so I went ahead and did it now, so that way I couldn't forget it. There were the 4 bolts at the bottom of the timing cover that come up from the oil pan, got them off. So I'm going to go ahead and let the truck back down, take the last bolt all the way out and the other bolt the rest of the way out for the power steering pump, and start working my way around the front of the timing cover. I don't usually pull the timing cover off still with the power steering pump still attached. Now, one bolt I did happen to know was in the front of the timing cover. It was being extremely stubborn, so I wanted to make sure I could get it out without it breaking off in the timing cover. So that's why I went ahead and pulled it that way. Now, when pulling the timing cover, so sometimes they are pretty stiff and stubborn and do take some wiggling, but just make sure before you ever go to pulling on it that you do in fact have every single bolt out of the timing cover. Well, the gasket's still stuck here. So this is the first time the timing cover's ever been off on this truck. You can tell that with how stubborn it was. This thing is gonna need a new set of timing chains and the tensioners, because this chain should not be that loose. I shouldn't be able to pull it out here around the guide. So we'll put a new set of chains in it, and tensioners and guides. And the new heads that I'm going to put on did not come with new cam phasers, so I'm going to be putting a new set of cam phasers on as well. I believe they came in the timing chain set that I ordered. So next step is I'm going to go ahead and set the top dead center. I'm going to pull the reluctor wheel off here. This is what the crankshaft position sensor picks up on and tells the computer where in the rotation the crankshaft is sitting. So, but now I can put the bolt back in the front of the crankshaft there and rotate it around to set it to top dead center. to the point where we have both heads off. Now this passenger side one, there's a bolt with a stud on the back that holds this water tube on. I had kind of forgot about it whenever I first attempted to lift the head out. So, but I got it off. Now, the bottom back two head bolts, with the cab on this truck, you cannot pull them all the way out before you take the head off. They hit the firewall and they hit the air conditioning dryer. I mean, if you pull the air conditioning dryer out, then you'd only have one bolt stuck in it. That's a whole nother mess. And then on the driver's side, there's one bolt that will not come out with the body on the truck, but we're able to go ahead and get it all the way out. So there's a little trick about picking up the bolt and holding it up so that it's not down in the block. So I'll get the surface prepped on it whenever I get the new heads in. The new heads have been ordered. They should be here in a day or two. And get the block prepped and get the rest of the parts in, and I'll start going back together with it. Thanks for watching.